Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Podium Picks. Sean Woodland and Tommy Marquez here. We're inside the Working Against Gravity studios. And Tommy, as far as nutrition coaching is concerned, Working Against Gravity always stands atop the podium.
Oh, no doubt. And they'll help you stand on top of your podium, Sean. I mean, you're probably already on top of your podium anyways, because you're just
me, you know.
You're just jacked. But if there were other people trying to get on your podium, they'd keep you on top. So, and the way they do that is through their one-on-one nutrition coaching. So anyone that's heard us talk about all the different benefits of working against gravity in their coaching before, they pair you one-on-one with your very own nutrition coach. Not only have they have their own kind of style of working check-ins, but they have developed their very own software for you to utilize for your check-ins. It's called Seismic. It's fantastic. It syncs up with your tracking program.
Mm-hmm.
So I use MyFitnessPal. Anything I track in MyFitnessPal automatically uploads it. And I log into the portal. I can do it through my phone, take my check-in photos, good to go. So they've really streamlined the check-in process, the communication process with your coach. And whether you have a very strict diet, you don't want to eat certain things, or you do intermittent fasting and you have a 16-hour fast every day, they can work with all of that. They have a team of coaches that is trained in a variety of different nutrition protocols to kind of help you get where you want to go. And I've been a member of Team WAG for 4 years now.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah. And they put up with my behind for that long. So that tells you something. But really, they are one of the best in the game. They've helped over 21,000 different clients reach their goals through nutrition. And they can help you if you use the code ELITE50 at workingagainstgravity.com. You get $50 off your first month. And trust me, you guys won't regret it. So no better time than now to try and dial in your nutrition while the rest of the world is trying to figure everything else out.
Yeah. Super thankful to have Working Against Gravity on board here with us. We are back now inside the CrossFit realm of our podium picks. We've kind of gone into the pop culture realm the past couple of weeks. We're now back in the CrossFit space. And this week I believe this was a listener submitted idea, a viewer someone submitted this idea to us.
Yes.
And we really liked it.
Yeah. And I will say this, I'll preface this ahead of time. Someone sent me an awesome idea for another CrossFit related podium picks or another podium picks. And I can't find the direct message and I can't remember who sent it to me. If you're listening and you hear this podium picks edition, direct message me again on my personal account at Tommy Marquez and send it to me, because it's really bothering me that I can't remember it right now.
This is like those missed connections that you read in your local newspaper.
Oh, man. Oh my gosh. It's driving me nuts right now. But yeah.
All right. Well, today's is going to be our top lifts in competition. So one-time lift in competition. It can be not just games, any level, what our favorite ones are. And I had a lot of fun brainstorming this one because it brought back some memories. And I sort of judged it by, I went back and watched each one of them, and whatever gave me like the most visceral reaction kind of just made that my number one. And I was kind of surprised at which one it was. So
really?
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to going through this list. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing some of yours, because I know you have a bigger frame of reference from me with all the sanctioned events you've been to.
Yeah.
But really like my list.
Now you kind of got me rethinking my list with the visceral reaction a bit. Yeah, that's interesting, Sean. I kind of like that.
All right.
That's tasty.
So I think it's my turn to start.
Yes.
All right. So I will start, and I will begin with my spirit of the games and my dark horse.
Okay.
My spirit of the games, and this is a moment that I've actually mentioned before on this segment. Spirit of the games goes to Cody Anderson, his 310-pound squat clean at the 2014 games. I mean, nothing was more quintessential CrossFit than that moment. You had this guy who probably shouldn't be able to lift this weight, step up to it. It was in the semifinal round. Everybody's watching, and he hits the lift. Crowd goes nuts, and our director, Mike Roth, did a great job of capturing the moment, because he had the shot from behind Cody with the crowd, and as he stood that thing up, you saw the crowd go up with him, and I remember people going, man, that was pretty incredible just to see him be able to lift that weight, because when he stepped up to it, I think all of us watching it were going, okay, he's going to sit here and stare at this thing and probably fail 2 or 3 times, and we'll call it a day. But he hit it. It was fantastic. It was the instance that we talk about a lot with CrossFit of how the person who finishes last gets cheered just as loudly, or if not louder, than the person who finishes first. And that was certainly the case with Cody Anderson in 2014. So that's my spirit of the game. So I felt like that just encapsulated everything that CrossFit and competition is all about. Now, my dark horse, This one, I don't think I'm breaking the rules with this because I think that he actually did this for 2. It was a 2 rep. But this is Matt Fraser's overhead squat at 315 at the Northeast Regional in 2013. Because this is the first time that Matt Fraser kind of showed up on everyone's radar.
Yeah.
And I remember he beat Spencer Hendel because I think he did it twice and Hendel did it once. They both had 315. Fraser won that event, but didn't have any other wins the entire weekend. Had a second place finish, I think, in the final event that year. But that was the first time, and I remembered, I'm going to give you credit. I remembered you saying in 2013, man, that guy's going to be really good someday. He kind of told me about his background and things. He goes, that there's a lot of talk about this guy being good. And that was the first time, and I can still see the video of him doing it, that he showed up on the radar, and we all know what happened after that. So Spirit of the Games goes to Cody Anderson, 310 squat clean at the 2014 games. And my dark horse, Matt Fraser, 315 overhead squat at the Northeast Regional in 2013. To you, Tommy.
All right. So my Spirit of the Games is Chris Spieler at the 2012 Southwest Regional.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes, during the snatch ladder. So many people who are new to the sport and the community may not remember this, but there was a time in 2012 when going into the back half of day number 2, it looked like the unthinkable was going to happen, and Chris Spieler was not going to make the CrossFit Games. He was going to fail to qualify. Chris Spieler, the one guy who's still around since 2007, the one guy keeping the streak alive. Everyone thought, how could this happen? And the big thing that was really going to be the thorn in his side was in 2012, they did a snatch ladder for regionals. I think it was 20 double unders, maybe 30 double unders, and then you lift the bar. And it was, you progress down the line, and it was looking like 225 was going to be the dividing mark. Like Spieler's got to hit 225 just to get ahead of the other people. And at the time, that was above his PR, well above his PR. And back in 2012,
that was a lot.
A 225 snatch was massive. That was like the dividing line for the CrossFit Games athletes, for the strong CrossFit Games athletes. And one by one, Chris Spieler just goes through these bars and grits it out, gets 215, and that was the big one because I think his max was maybe 210-ish around that time. Everybody kind of holds their breath. Spieler lines up for 225, and you talk about like a David versus Goliath type snatch pull, and you can go back and watch the film. It's still up there. It wasn't the prettiest, and Spieler is a technician when it comes to movement, but he just grit and bared that 225 snatch into existence and hit it and kept his hopes alive. And that eventually, that lift kept him in the game and eventually led to one of the few moments where I think Patrick Holden Sherwood might admit that he was brought to tears in CrossFit Games competition. So, so that was the 2012 regional.
That's a good one.
My dark horse, and I really picked this one just because it didn't have, I had you mentioned the visceral reaction. I was teeter-tottering between one or two. And some of it, I will admit, has to do with the manner with which it was replayed and highlighted to people. And that was Rich Froning's 305 snatch at the 2014 CrossFit Games Invitational.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes.
You just quick when he did that, I remember Senior was sitting right behind me. Yeah. And when we went into break, I just turned around because it was like close to the commercial break. I go, "What do you feed that kid?"
Yeah.
And Senior goes, "Whatever he wants."
Classic Senior comment right there. At the time, that 305 snatch was one of the heaviest we'd seen in competition, and I remember preceding that, I believe, was Paul Tremblay going head-to-head with Jason Kalipa in the clean and jerk. Yes. Remember, you had to have a clean and jerk and a snatch. And I want to say they did the clean and jerk first, maybe.
I think they did, because I remember there was the Tremblay was, I think he had a one.
He had one, and he's like,
"I'm not doing it anymore." Yeah.
And he did it kind of like as a dig, because Tremblay is just a great ball buster. Yeah. And he did it as a kind of a dig at Kalipa, and I remember seeing that. And Rich, there's an edit that was on social media, but if you go back, there's a story of the 2014 Invitational that Torrin made, and I believe he voiced most of it. And then he does this kind of lead in, and then it's a slow-mo sequence of Rich hitting that snatch, and it's beautiful. Oh man, it's awesome.
That's a good one. I forgot about that one.
It's a quintess, and at the time the USA I think was trailing and was trying to come back to get the lead, and it was kind of unthinkable that they would lose again after they had lost in 2013. You remember when they lost against the world?
That was the 6 team. Yeah. Or the 6-member team. Yeah.
And so there was a little bit of grit behind it, and Rich just showed up in big fashion, and it was kind of a really cool epic moment for him.
That's good. Those are good ones. Okay, so now we move on to the podium itself. So I will begin with my 3rd place pick. And before I get into my podium, this was super close. This is like a couple points, I think, separated each one, because I'm a huge fan of all these. So 3rd place, go back to 2016, go back to the California Regional. Josh Bridges squat snatch at 265. Because if you remember the prior year, he had failed to make it to the games. And there was that moment that Sevon captured where I think it was after the final event, and Bridges looks up at the scoreboard and you can see he's like, yep, nope. He goes, nope. And just knew that he hadn't made it.
Yep.
And came back in 2016 and wrecked shop. And that event, I think I want to say it was event
1.
It was the first one.
Yeah.
So he kicked it off in style, and people were thinking, man, is he going to be able to get through this thing? Because that last barbell at 265, that's super heavy, especially for a guy like Josh Bridges. And he gets up there and hits the one prior to it, which I think was 245, which I think was close to his PR at the time. And so now he's got to go hit 265, steps up, nails it, crowd goes crazy. Josh Bridges' celebration across the finish line, and you're like, oh yeah, he back. So that one is always anything that when Josh Bridges has a great moment and celebrates, that always sticks out to me. And then I thought of this one because it had to do with a single lift, and I just remember that moment where it's like, man, I don't know if he's gonna be able to do this.
Yeah,
and he crushed it.
Oh man,
yeah.
I have a distinct memory of that clip again of either Mars or Heber following Josh Bridges as he hits that one, and he stands up. You can tell he's genuinely relieved and excited for himself that he got that, because that was the hurdle of the weekend.
Exactly.
For him. And he smashed it. So my 3rd place, let's see, my 3rd place is Tolamor Quino at the 2019 Reykjavik CrossFit Championships, where he set the snatch, the heaviest snatch in CrossFit competition category. I think I had to have one pick in here for the absolute highest that we've seen in CrossFit official CrossFit competition. And it's funny because Tola beat his old record that I believe he set in Dubai a few months prior.
I remember that.
And I remember there was just like talk, oh, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? And you know what? He stepped up and did it. And that really started to stoke the flames of like, what can this guy do as an individual? Like how is he going to do it? I think that was one of those moments where people were like, yeah, he needs to go Indy. And, that kind of set the stage for 2020, shows up, gets his first games invite. Unfortunately, I think that's been rescinded, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Because of everything that's changed. But that was just one of the moments where I think that was a big eye opener for him as one of the athletes to watch and one of the exciting athletes to watch. And he's he's one of the young, I don't know how young he is, but I guess relative to the sport, people that everybody's excited to watch. Anytime he steps onto the floor now with a barbell, you're like, I need to watch that.
Yeah.
There's something amazing that's going to happen. So
that's a good one.
Yeah.
I forgot about Tola. That's a really good one. Okay. 2nd place now. And this is when I almost put it at number 1, but this happened this year. And this was Tia Toomey with the 270, the clean at the 2020 Rogue Invitational. Because I mean, first of all, just think about that 270, and she made it look pretty easy, and it was a lift she didn't even need to do, but it was the reaction afterwards. And I just liken that to, if you saw the Godzilla remake, the Gareth Edwards remake, where Godzilla has just gotten done defeating the Muto, whatever in San Francisco, they had the big battle, and then before he goes back into the ocean, he just lets out that the Godzilla roar, and it's like lets everybody know, I'm the king of the monsters here. And that was what I like in Tia Toomey's celebration at the end of that too. It was, oh, you all think you're going to compete with me? Here, I'm going to just clean 270, and then I'm just going to, give my Godzilla roar into the camera, and that's what you need to come after at the games if you think you're going to dethrone me. So that was not only an incredible lift, but an incredible warning shot that was fired across the bow of every other female competitor out there.
That was the weightlifting equivalent of walking up to the biggest, baddest dude in the bar and just dropping him with one swing.
Exactly right. That's what I'm talking about. That was that moment where, I mean, we all know Tia's good.
Yeah.
But then we watched that. I remember Chase and Coach D were watching it with us. And I just went, come on. Like, how are you going to beat this girl? That was, it was insane. And then I always like it when Tia's I don't want to say she's emotional. I mean, she picks her spots where she celebrates, but when she lets it go with a celebration, she lets it go, and it's awesome to watch because she's so mild mannered when you speak to her.
Yeah.
So yeah, to see her in that mode was a blast.
Yep, I definitely pick up what you're putting down there. So my number 2, this might be one of the most impressive lifts that to this day people don't talk about. And this is,
I think I know where you're going.
And there are lifts that people talk about, that there were big lifts back in the day that happened from like the outliers. You'd see, like, remember Oksana Slovenko?
Yes. Yeah.
But she was an Olympian weightlifter coming over, and she wasn't really a threat to qualify for the CrossFit Games. But this was one of my favorite lifts from a legit games contender, and that was Elizabeth Akinwale at the 2014 regionals in the North Central.
Oh, yeah.
And she hang snatched 200 pounds.
That's right. I forgot about that one too. Great pull, man.
If you go today and you're like, a 200-pound snatch, everyone's going to be like, that's crazy impressive. The 200-pound threshold is very rarely broken, even in today's game. But Elizabeth Akinwale hit a 200-pound hang snatch 6 years ago. And not only that, I remember was talking about back in the day, the mixtures of things that we'd like to see athletes do to be a legit CrossFit Games athlete. And I can't remember, the conversation was around that in 2013 about the mix, specifically the higher order weightlifting and the higher order gymnastic skills. And then we got to see in regionals that year, the hang snatch immediately into the handstand walk, where you had to clear the entire length before you could come down. Otherwise you were out. And then you had an opportunity to go back. Well, Elizabeth Akinwale hang snatched 205, which was the record at the time, and then handstand walked 315 feet, which was I believe the record at the time, which I think was 3 lengths and change. And she, at that, I think 2013, she was top 10 at the games, and everyone was just kind of like blown away. Like, that was the mixture of athlete that didn't quite exist outside of a handful of people. And I think that was the time when the 200-pound barrier for the women's snatch really went down, because that was like the Prefontaine effect for 4 minutes or whatever it may be. And it was like the 300-pound mark for the men, and not really anyone was really hitting it outside of the reformed weightlifters. What is it? Pat used to call them, I'm a recovered weightlifter or whatever. But then she did it, and did it with such like strength and grace, and then kicked up on her hands and blew everyone away. And to me, that was one of the I guess, like, signature Elizabeth Akinwale, because she was so good at gymnastics, so good with the barbell. She was the queen of the barbell from when she showed up, and basically when she really came into her own in 2012 to 2014 for that 3 to 4, maybe 2015, 3 to 4 year stretch. Yeah, I forgot about that one, but it's a good point of, like, where you watch an athlete and you just realize how far ahead she was of everybody else. And that's, like you said, it just dragged the rest of the field up, because it's like, oh, I guess that is possible now. And she was one of the first athletes to be able to turn around and like double dip to go into the weightlifting world as well. So,
okay. So we're at number 1 now. So number 1 for me, and you talk about going back and a lift that not a lot of people talk about. But I wasn't sure if this was going to be my favorite. I knew I wanted it on the list, and I watched it again. Goosebumps. This is all the way back to 2009 at the ranch.
Oh,
deadlift ladder. Josh Bridges, or not Josh, sorry, Josh Everett. 505.
Yep.
Pulls that thing Like he finishes the ladder, and it's the celebration that clinched it for him. Because if you know Josh, he's a very quiet, very mild-mannered guy. He's very subdued. We worked with him a little bit on the media team in the early days, and he was just not, didn't get too excited, very even keel. But when you watch him, the couple lifts before that, go back and look up the 2009 deadlift ladder from the games on YouTube, and you can kind of watch the whole thing. The guy is near psychotic when he's walking up to the barbells. He's talking to himself. He's stomping his feet. He's yelling and screaming. He pulls 505, looks at his judge, sticks out his tongue, just gets fired up, looks at the crowd, drops the weight, walks off. Just walks right off. Doesn't want to talk to anybody, but I liken it to Tom Hardy, the actor from Warrior. Remember when he would go and one punch, knock the guy out, just opens the cage and just walks right back. It was the same thing. And I watched that. I went, that gets me fired up.
Oh my gosh.
It was just so cool to see, because it's one of those, it's before, Josh Bridges came on the scene, and he was known for the king of the celebration. But to see Josh ever just look at his judge and just go, rah, and then
so
just
good.
drop the thing and then walk right off and went, oh yeah,
that's so good.
That is,
oh my God, that's such a good
that
pull.
was my number one, because, and I thought maybe that, like I said, I knew I wanted it on the list. I didn't know where it was going to go, but after I watched all of them, that was the one that gave me the chills. And so I said, well, that's got to be number one.
Mm-hmm. And it's such a shame, because Josh Everett got cut that year, one event before the max snatch. And we didn't get to see him max out his snatching competition. And very few will remember, he split snatched because of shoulder and mobility issues and injury issues. And one of my favorite quotes ever in the history of CrossFit, and hopefully we're actually going to have him on. We've been in touch about having him on and talking about some of the development of the sport and his training and stuff like that. Is John Wellborn, former NFL offensive lineman who owns Power Athlete, used to founded CrossFit Football. I think it's before the finale of 2008. And he's in an ice bath in the back of a truck. And they're talking about the finale of it being basically heavy squat, clean grace. And then everyone's talking about Josh Everett, oh man, you better watch out, because Spieler was in the lead, but Josh is going to come. And I think it was Sevon or Carrie Peterson was to John, was why is it, what's the big deal about Josh? And Wellborn looks at him almost insulted and is like, have you ever seen that guy lift weights? Do you know?
Yeah.
It's do you know the words that are coming out of my mouth? Have you seen this guy lift? And that was just a quintessential Everett moment. I'm bummed we didn't get to see him snatch too. God, I'm actually really kind of mad that I didn't put that one in.
So I'm really anxious to hear. Excuse me, you're number one.
All right. So my number one, and call it recency bias, whatever you want. But I'm gonna talk about visceral reaction, importance, and everything, all-time history. I'm gonna cheat here, and I'm gonna put two lifts together side by side.
I'll allow it.
And it's Matt Fraser and Tia Toomey in the clean ladder this past year at the games on Saturday night. And these are both history-making lifts, but under very, very, very different circumstances. And I think that's what makes them tied at the hip and ultimately makes them so special, especially given that they're training partners. And I think it's fitting that they're both included here. For Tia, it was a coronation type moment, similar to what in Rogue, basically solidifying that she is the greatest female CrossFitter of all time. And despite the other athletes' and it was very symbolic in that despite any other athlete's best attempts along the way and getting close at points along the way, and in this case, it was Amanda Barnhart, she was just on a completely different level. And that there was no doubt that she was going to hit that lift. And you could just see that ascension for her into the going from being considered among the all-time greats to ascending to the all-time greats. And that was the difference. It was when she had her foot a graphic moment, I guess, but she had her foot on the throat of the competition, and she had an option there, and she chose the only option that an all-time great would choose. It's the Michael Jordan effect when you go for the throat. For Matt, on the other hand, he absolutely needed that win, and he was under a type of pressure that I don't think he's ever been in since his title run began. it's a year where he's chasing down a 4th title to tie Rich, and the parallels of Rich's 4th title year where he had to have some from behind drama was fitting too. And then you got that feeling, kind of like with Rich in the 21-15-9 moment and the push-pull moment. Matt showcased in that moment that he's not just a front runner, that he's not a winner just when he can get out to that early lead. And in many ways kind of dispelled the ghosts of 2015. You remember he got out to a lead, lost it, and was never quite able to chase it down. I feel like he got that monkey off of his back and basically being able to showcase that in the midst of serious adversity, he can take the punch and come back swinging harder and not just do that, but finish the fight. And this is a hot take here and maybe an unpopular opinion, but I think that lift alone may have saved the reputation of the CrossFit Games.
Interesting. I'd like to know why.
Think about all the drama of the year, the cuts, the uncertainty of the test, all the lack of communication, the changes that have happened in the last year, and all just the bad garbage that was the toxic garbage that was swirling around that wasn't necessarily at the forefront, but you could kind of feel that like the hyenas were swirling a little bit just to pounce on this as like, this is this is when the games jumped the shark type situation. And I think there would have been a legitimate issues, and I don't want to take this away from Noah, but if he had won, there would have been legitimate question marks around the claim of fittest on earth, because for the first time, what CrossFit defined as an adequate test for the fittest on earth changed drastically with very little discussion or communication, to the point where I think it even steps outside of the whole unknown and unknowable, I guess, kind of fallback that kind of CrossFit has. And if Matt doesn't win, given everything that happens, then I think everyone kind of like backs away a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's a really good point.
And there's something to be said about showing up and doing what is asked of you. But if what's asked of you is not a legitimate test by your very own definition, then there's an issue. Then we've talked about this at length. But Matt hitting that lift, and after that lift happened, I think if going into that event, if you had polled the audience, is Matt going to win? It's maybe 70-30, 60-40. After that lift, probably 95-5 at that point,
easily.
And I remember getting back into the RV that night and just being like, he's going to come back. Yeah. He's going to come back and do it. And I think that lift was the Heisman moment of it. Yeah. And so that's why I think in some universe, in some parallel universe, when that doesn't happen, he saved the reputation of the CrossFit Games.
I would agree with you on that, because I think that there would have been a lot of, and poor Noah, because he, if he had won, he won. Yeah. But there would have been so much. You only won because the scoring system. You only won because a bag fell out of Fraser's backpack. You only won because Fraser missed that last lift. Like that would have been, it's almost like the Graham Holmberg thing. Like you only won because Rich fell off the rope type thing. Yeah. And that's not fair. It isn't, but that would have happened. And I think to your point, it would have taken away from
it would have tarnished the reputation of the games.
Absolutely.
Very much so, because of all the other things as well. So, and then, at the end of it, they both walk away, two training partners. And I would say they probably consider each other family at this point, walking away with the top spot in that event. They both walk away with a record tying and a record setting CrossFit Games title, and they keep the ball rolling. Yeah, man. No, that's a very well thought out number one. Whereas mine was more just visceral watching the thing happen. I love the fact that you went. I love the deeper meaning in that, and I think you're absolutely right about that moment, saving the games. Not for that year, but maybe the future as well. But were there any that you left off that you thought about? Because there's some tough ones. I mean, for pure visceral reaction, Brooks clean and jerk in 2015 when she won that. That was a good one, yeah. That was one of. So I remember I was at the desk. We finished a segment. We threw to I don't know if you guys were calling it maybe for ESPN.
I think so.
We tossed it elsewhere, and I had 10 minutes to go and watch the event live. My parents were in the stands. It was, last year, one of the last years, I guess, in the StubHub Center. And I remember sprinting across the StubHub Center to where my parents were, sitting down, watching Brooke's second and third lifts and seeing her win, and yelling so loudly that I lost part of my voice, and I ran back. And I ran back to the desk, and I immediately went to our hair and makeup people, and I was like, "What do you have for my throat? I can't speak right now." And she's like, "All right, you get this, and this," and mixed up a concoction. I could actually make it through the next show.
Nice.
Yeah.
One that I thought of was, and this goes back to 2014 too, was, if you remember, Lauren Brooks had that save where I think she went down to like both knees and got back up and stood up. I mean, not that it wasn't the prettiest lift, but I mean, she made it count, and the fact that she was able to save it after going down to not one but two knees was pretty impressive. But I kind of wanted to put Chandler Smith in there as well with his deadlifts, but that was more than one lift.
Yeah. In that same vein as Lauren Brooks, Josh Bridges in 2016 at the finishing the squat clean ladder. He caught that one and he hopped it up. I'm like, that was just pure grit.
Yeah.
That's all it was. This is a regional one. But in 2011, the ladder for the strength event was a thruster ladder. And Danny, what's his last name? Oh my God. He was from TJ's gym.
I know the guy you're talking about.
Oh man, what is his name? Danny Nichols.
Yep.
Cleared the thruster ladder, and they just brought out more weight. And he's just like, I'm just gonna keep going. And everybody's like, how far is he gonna make? I think he thrustered 335, maybe 325.
It was something ridiculous. I do remember that. Yeah, they're just like, well, we'll just keep going. All right.
Well, I got to the end of the county and decided just to keep going,
keep lifting. I'm tired now. I think I'll go home.
There's that's trying to think. 2012 was the Spieler one.
There's just been, what's cool is like and I think it was Sam Farber who coined it this, because I think it was his quote. It's like the 1 rep max events of the heavy events are like the home run derby of CrossFit. I think he nailed it with that. Like everyone just loves watching big weight go up, and they want home runs going over the fence, and that's those events provide us with some great moments.
The first year in Madison, we had the snatch event, and it was like going around. One of the early heats that I got to watch, I have a photo. It's on my Instagram of I'm right behind Easy, and we're kind of jawing at each other a little bit. And he's like hyping up the crowd, and he right after he walks out, I'm like, "You can do all right." He's like, "Yeah, watch this," and like turns around, and then I think he had a top 5 finish at least, and snatched 295, maybe 300.
I think that sounds right. I remember he was right there in contention for the win.
Yeah, and that I remember like getting excited for that and watching the crowd go nuts and getting to experience inside the Coliseum for the first time, and just like the way Easy just kind of played it up. He's just so smooth and just jawing at people. It was fantastic.
All right, well, those are our podium picks for our best competition lifts. We would love to hear what yours are, so just leave them in the comments section, and maybe get back to some pop culture on our next podium picks. But thanks for joining us for this edition of Podium Picks. For Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. We'll talk to you guys soon.